right, I have 10 o'clock on my computer. Welcome, everyone. I'm Charlie Taylor, one of the continuing education consultants at KDLA, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the Accidental Facilities Manager. Just a little bit of quick housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions for our presenters today, please feel free to use the chat function, any comments, things like that. If you haven't found the chat already, you'll see a little purple button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen with an arrow on it. Pardon me. Just click that to expand the side panel, and you'll see a little chat bubble down there, and you just use that to talk to the presenters or any of your fellow attendees. And also use that, feel free to use that if you have any technical issues. I'll be here helping out with those. The PDF of today's slides is available in the Blackboard Learn course window. If you just pop back into that, you'll be able to download that. I'll also be happy to send it out in an email. The webinar is being recorded, and it will be available to view within our online portal within a week, hopefully much sooner than that. And finally, captioning is available for today's webinar in 2 ways. You should see a notification bar at the top of your screen. You can say yes to that if you'd like to see them live on the screen. You can also use this link I'm putting into the chat right now, which is for stream text. And that will open up a separate tab or window when you can do the captions. Okay, and I am going to turn it over to our presenters today and let them introduce yourselves. Andrea and Lauren, and when you get finished, I'll pull up your slides for you. So just let me know when you're ready for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Good afternoon, or sorry, my script says good afternoon, but it is good morning. And thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Lauren Starra, and I am a library building specialist at the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, which is the state agency in Massachusetts. Andrea and I are both very passionate about library buildings and library design. My first career was as an architect, and my second was as a librarian, and I have the great good fortune of combining my 2 careers into one now. And Andrea?
And I am Andrea Bono Bunker, and I have been in the library field for, oh gosh, now almost 16 years. And I have worked in every single department of a library, all the way from volunteering at my local library and through being a director of a library where we did a whole building project of a renovation of an 1879 H.H. Richardson building and an expansion to that as well. So done lots of space planning and that whole building project. So you know, taking care of an old building is something I'm very familiar with, and I'm excited to share what we both know and have learned from both being accidental facilities managers as directors.
Okay, can you put the slides up now, Charlie?
I sure will. I'm also going to start putting those links back in the chat for you all. And the links that I'm going to put in the chat will also go out in a follow-up email, so everybody, our attendees, don't need to feel like you need to write them all down. So there you go.
Thank you. I'm turning my camera off so I don't have to look at myself while I do this. But I did want you to see my face and you know, get an idea that I am a human being and not some, I don't know, recording. So again, thank you for coming. Andrea and I both get, as I said, very excited about library buildings because it's what we do every day. It's our work, and you know, we're kind of submersed in it all the time. But I was a library director for many years before I came to the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, and I'd like to get an idea of who's here today. So could you put in the chat whether you're with a public library or an academic or school or special library, and if you're a director or a trustee or some other position affiliated with a library. Just so we can have an idea of who's here today. It can help us tailor what we say a little bit. We've got a branch manager in a public library and a public library director, branch manager, director, assistant director. Looks like at least so far we're all public libraries. So that does make a difference. Okay, thank you for that. That's very helpful. Okay, so we assume, because you're here, that you are an accidental facilities manager. And I know that when I got my first library director job, it was a little bit of a shock to realize that I was in charge of the building as well as everything else to do with the library. In library school, at least the library school I went to, they didn't mention that a library director does basically everything that nobody else wants to do. Every building is different, so we're going to have to be pretty high level and general today. We do plan to leave time at the end for your questions, but I want to mention that if we use terms that you don't understand, sometimes lip into building jargon, architectural jargon or construction jargon. So if we do that, please put something in the chat and say, what did that mean? So we can clarify it for you. Our hope is that everyone who's here today walks away with something practical and immediate that you can apply to your library world. I do want to just briefly say that we're going to talk, at least I'm going to talk pretty fast today because we have a lot to get through in a short time, and we definitely want to leave time at the end for questions. So Charlie said this is going to be recorded, so if I talk too fast, you can listen to it again. Okay, sorry, Andrea, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. So the care and feeding of your building. If we think about your building like a living thing, almost like taking care of a pet, you need to meet its everyday needs and provide it with some level of preventative care and safeguard it and help it recover from an emergency and plan for the future with its needs and health in mind. So hopefully you also have some love for your building like you would your pet. But we're going to start today with the everyday routine care. So what you should be doing on a daily basis or a frequent basis for your building itself. So a lot of that begins with who is responsible for what. So since you're here, you likely fall somewhere in the responsibility hierarchy, and every county and municipality is different in regard to who is responsible for what, when they are responsible, and why they are responsible. So I bet we can prove that in this very webinar here. But today, we usually go through this and ask people to put in, if they have a custodian or if they have a facilities manager or a DPW staff member who takes care of your building. And I'm wondering if in the chat you can just write down who is responsible for the everyday maintenance of your building, the everyday cleaning of that building, and walking around and making sure that everything is running well. So do you have a facilities manager? Do you have a full-time custodian, a part-time custodian? Do you have a Department of Public Works person that you call, or do you have contracts with various contractors? Okay.
Wow, 2 full-time custodians. That's great.
We have part-time maintenance, all staff, which is something that happens up here as well.
And Anne gets to do it herself. Great.
Okay, yeah, so the 2 times a week cleaner, not reliable. Okay, so this runs the gamut, right? Okay. So custodians, some cleaning contracts, some that's left up to staff, and we have the same situation up here too. So it's when the toilet would get clogged when I was a director and we didn't have our custodian on duty at the time. It was me with a plunger going into the bathroom. So I'm sure that that is something that happens to everyone here too. So when you think of the breadth of what they do on a daily basis, or what you have to do on a daily basis, you know, are you doing full scale cleaning every day? Are you walking around making sure all the systems are working properly, only going when there's an alert to check on a specific system? So it's different for everyone based on this hierarchy of responsibility and what you're able to do. And I think, you know, now with COVID, hopefully, I did see 2 times a week having a cleaner. I'm sure that there's a responsibility falling on staff too, to make sure that things are sanitized and cleaned even more frequently. So whether you're doing it multiple times per week, bi-weekly, weekly, I don't want to go into bi-monthly or monthly because I know that seems like a long time in between. But there is, you know, a variance among libraries, even in our states, even in our regions, about how they go about doing this and taking care of their buildings every day. And you know, if you think about how your buildings are cleaned or maintained, you know, is it because of the organizational structure or union designations? Is it because of funding? Which probably should be the first question, and I'm sure that funding has a lot to do with it. That you that either hinders you from being able to have full cleaning and maintenance, or that allows you to. So the most important question, though, to ask is if this arrangement is effective, if it's efficient, and if it's working for your building. So that is something that is sometimes out of your control, but making sure that you know why this is happening and maybe making steps toward rectifying it, you know, and we'll get into some of the paperwork that you can have that will help you prove your needs a little bit better moving forward if you need to get a better schedule for your cleaning and maintenance. So those spreadsheets will help you organize all of this information and the information for every aspect of your facility. And as we know, that information is power. So when you go on vacation, or a significant weather event is on the horizon, or if it hits suddenly, and you need facts to back up your budgetary requests, we hope you leave today with the tools that make each of these situations and the general operation of your facility smoother. Lauren?
Sorry, the mute button was on. I'm so sorry. Cleaning is not the only everyday issue you may encounter. And I'm going to spend some time talking about HVAC, which stands for heating, ventilating, and cooling systems. These systems are notorious for not working the way they're supposed to. Lighting, plumbing, and water leakage are common. As librarians, we often say, I don't know, but I can find out for you. And that principle applies to facility management as well. The most crucial piece of information you need to have available is not how to fix a problem, but what to do and who to call when there is a problem. So figuring this out and documenting it is your job. There are 2 parts to this mission that can be done in either order. One is a condition walkthrough, and one is a deep dive into your files and records. Condition walkthrough may be the less daunting place to begin, because you will get a sense of what you have so you can better understand what is relevant in your files. I don't know if you're like me, but I have at home, I have files of manuals and warranties from 30 years ago that have no relevance anymore. So cleaning that out is always a challenge. Before we start with the condition walkthrough, though, here is a short primer on the elements that we mentioned. So as I said, HVAC stands for heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. And the interest in this particular system has grown dramatically in the last 2 years because good ventilation is so important to controlling the spread of COVID-19. I spent a lot of time in the last 2 years learning more and more about HVAC. In general, larger buildings, if your building is large, you may have multiple zones controlled by local or centralized thermostats. Older or smaller buildings may have manually operated thermostats only, just a dial on the wall. Newer buildings or renovated buildings may have thermostats that are part of a very complex building management system, which is accessed through an online portal. HVACs are complicated. They have motors and fans and blowers and coils and ducts and filters, lots and lots of parts. In the last couple of years, some public buildings have upgraded their filtration capacity to MERV 13 or higher. MERV is the filter rating system as far as the size of particles that can be filtered out, and MERV 13 is the recommended grade of filter for virus particles. Some libraries I know of, especially some in Ohio, have installed sanitation technologies inside their HVAC systems, like UV light or ionization systems, to try to kill the virus before it enters the space, before the air enters the space. Some of these technologies are more proven and effective than others, but regardless, if you have done any of these upgrades to your system, if you have automatic controls, there should be settings for different seasons. Obviously, your HVAC needs are different in the summer and the winter. And if possible, a ventilation-only mode should be made available. If you have a new system, it may be possible even to incorporate a pandemic setting where any air that goes through the system comes from the outside. There's no recirculation of the air in the ventilation system. So you want to set controls for the seasons. You especially want to change out or clean the filters according to the manufacturer's directions, and that's usually at least twice a year. And make sure that any ceiling fans or operable windows are working with and not against your HVAC system. If you have the good fortune of upgrading your HVAC system, consider separating the heating and cooling functions from the ventilation system so that you can have ventilation going all the time and not having to spend the energy on heating or cooling. Some HVAC engineers we've talked to have said that there is a silver lining to this pandemic in that people are paying attention to indoor air quality, or IAQ. Now, in the past, the standard for IAQ in the US has been extremely low. And we know now that the future is in higher indoor air quality standards. And on another topic, also in reducing or eliminating fossil fuel-based systems. And Andrea is going to take a few minutes to talk more about resilience and sustainability.
So I tried to look at what was happening in Kentucky a little bit in terms of climate change and legislation around climate change. Here in Massachusetts, we have a very robust Climate Act that just was signed this past spring, in spring of 2021, along with an executive order number 594, which for all state buildings requires us to go all electric and really get on the grid, which is getting cleaner every day. So when we talk about the HVAC systems, you know, a lot of times what is applicable to libraries who are upgrading are air source heat pumps. So those are something that have gotten significantly better in the past few years. I know that we're in a very cold climate up here, so before you used to have a backup system for it when it hit below 0. And we have had a few of those days this year. But now they're making heat pumps that are quite adept at handling those temperatures when they plummet. So it's a much better technology that's out there. So the air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps, but those usually require geothermal wells, which can be still quite expensive now. But in our state, when you upgrade, you are supposed to move to all electric because to meet our climate goals of 2050, being carbon neutral by that time. So that also going all electric allows you to entertain the idea of solar panels. So if you're doing a roof upgrade anytime soon, or you're doing new construction, that is the time to investigate solar panels, because you want to get the longest period of time possible for having those solar panels on the roof. They don't necessarily want to put solar panels on a roof that has to be replaced in 5 years, because it's just not economically a good solution. So if you're doing anything like that to your building, that is the time to think about that infrastructure and think about how you can power your building in the future. We also have libraries that are working with their municipalities to put solar on their roof, and if it can't benefit the library solely because of the way the systems are set up currently, they're taking that energy that's produced and they're putting in battery backup systems, and then they're able to help power the rest of the municipal buildings in the town. So there are ways to become resiliency hubs where you can help with the electrical load across the municipality or across the county, however it may work in your area. But those battery backups are actually taking the place of generators a lot of times now too. So that technology has gotten much better. So you're able to not only offset your peak load when it's really hot in the summertime and you need that cooling to be happening in your building, and the grid can't handle it, so you can use your solar generation to offset that and keep your building going without putting a strain on the grid. But you can also store that energy so that if you do have a major storm, you're able to utilize the energy during the storm as a generating source of energy. And then once the sun comes out again, it's starting to generate electricity for you and restore that battery backup as well that may have been drained during the storm. So the technology is getting much better. So if you're doing any upgrades to your building, you want to think about that. And then you can also serve as a cooling, heating, or powering hub for your local community as well, which is really wonderful. But I will also say that when you are doing any of these changes, these energy transitions for your building, you really also need to think about your envelope. And Lauren's going to go a little bit more into the envelope, but making sure that you upgrade your insulation, maybe your windows, any area where there could be leakage, because the heat pumps are not as robust as what you might get with natural gas or with oil heat. It's not the same level of heating. I actually have an air source heat pump in my home, but it's an even heating system. So I have to say it's very comfortable, but it's not what you need to be used to with your other fuel sources. So I'll turn it back over to you, Lauren.
Thanks, Andrea. And just a little clarification, when Andrea says envelope, what that means is kind of the outside skin of your building. So the outside walls, the roof, and the floor on the lowest level. That's called the envelope. So I'm going to speed up a little bit because we're not getting very far. So lighting varies based on when it was installed. So you may have incandescent, halogen, compact fluorescent, LEDs, or a combination of all of the above. Some buildings have manually operated light switches, just a switch on the wall. Others have very complex centralized automated lighting systems. Some lights are motion sensor activated, and others can be programmed for the time of day. And code and LEED certification, if your building has a LEED level certification, those drive a lot of the decision making when you're renovating or building new lighting systems. One thing that we highly recommend for any library is that when you are making decisions about lighting fixtures, make sure that both the fixtures and the replacement bulbs are readily available and not exorbitantly expensive. It's really helpful if you have maybe 2 or 3 different kinds of bulbs in your lighting fixtures throughout your building. I was once a library director in a building that had 35 different kinds of replacement bulbs, and keeping those on the shelf is just crazy. I also, in my last director job, we built a new building, and the architect specified, I wasn't paying attention, the architect specified the children's room, these hanging light fixtures imported from Italy. Okay, that's fine, I guess. But one of the fixtures was damaged in transit, and it took us over 6 months to get a replacement fixture. And the bulbs were hard to get. It was just a really bad decision. So pay attention to those kinds of details. Plumbing. Unless you have no running water in your building, which we have that in at least 3 libraries. 3 libraries in Massachusetts that we know of don't have any running water, but most libraries do have plumbing. There are old school fixtures, there are motion sensor activated or solar powered fixtures, there are sprinklers, hot water heaters, etc. And all of them can lead to water infiltration. As Andrea mentioned, I too have had the joy of unclogging many a toilet in my library, because as the library director, that falls to you. I have been there. That's one of those things they don't tell you about in library school. Not just clogged fixtures, but water from burst pipes, misfiring sprinklers, or, unfortunately, intentional blockage of sinks with paper towels. Those can all cause serious problems of water flooding in your bathrooms or kitchens. Also, if you have a leaky roof, if you have heavy snow loads in a heavy snow winter, or ice dams, leaky skylights, porous stone foundations, if you have a high water table, you can have leakage in your lowest floors. All of these create the risk of water infiltration. So how do you know when one or more of these common issues applies to you? And your senses, sight, hearing, smell, those are your best tools. And this brings us to the walkthrough.
So the condition walkthrough, these are all photos from my library before we had our renovation expansion project. So please don't judge, but they are, you have to walk around your building and listen and smell and see what is happening. And it's not just a one and you're done type of thing, because we know that every day can present different challenges. But it should be done at regular intervals, and whether or not you just decide on a weekly one or a bi-weekly one, whichever one you think works best. And it doesn't have to be you. It could be, your custodian, your part-time custodian, someone on staff who is very keenly aware of issues and systems. It can be your facilities manager. It can be someone other than you, but it's good for you to go on at least the first one to make sure that you understand what you have, where you have it, and what's happening in each of those areas. So you can do it at regular intervals, such as at the time of completing tasks on a maintenance checklist, which we'll go over. If you do not possess an inventory of equipment in your facility, this is a great time to compile one. So bring another person along with you to help take notes as you go through on this initial walkthrough. And if you have access to an individual with facilities experience for that initial walkthrough, please bring them along. So it doesn't have to be someone who is working in your building. If your county or your municipality has someone on staff that you think would be great, you can bring them with you. But whatever you do, just bring someone with you to take notes as you go through, because it can be overwhelming. So the first one is sites. So what you're seeing in this image is the electrical room and the firebox and the inverter, all of those lovely pieces of equipment with chairs and screens in front of them and book carts. So which should never happen. They should always be cleared. We had no space in this library before we expanded, so things ended up in places where they shouldn't have been. So just even looking for those issues that could arise and making sure that someone didn't put something where it shouldn't be, and making sure that there's clear access to all of your systems is important. So when you're going through for sites, you're looking at your interior walls. What's the condition? Do you have any efflorescence on those walls, which is that that white powdery stuff that looks like it's on the walls, and that is showing you that there's been water infiltration and it's dried up. You're looking at your exterior walls, if you have brick or stone, look at the mortar itself. Do you have any areas of weakness, anything that's happening on that exterior? Do you have ivy that's growing up it? Because that can also compromise the stone or the brick as well. Looking at those things, looking at your floors. If your building was built in the 60s or 70s, most likely you have some asbestos tile in there. Is there any friable asbestos tile, any cracks, anything that makes it so that it would be unsafe? Or just looking at your floors for the same thing, efflorescence, or looking at weak spots or anything that could be an issue. Your ceilings and your roofs. So I don't know about you, but oftentimes I would look up and be like, where did that brown spot come from? So it tells you if there's if there has been a leak, or does it look wet, so that you can catch something before it becomes an issue later on. Your roof, we had slate tiles on our roof, and sometimes in storms we'd find them all around the ground around the library because they would just fall right off. It was a 100-year-old roof. So just making sure that you're checking that out, making sure there are no places where water could infiltrate in your roof, weak points, anything like that. Looking at your lights, are there any light fixtures that are out? I know that we get so used to our surroundings that sometimes we don't notice when things need to be replaced. Looking at the furniture, obviously for condition, your fixtures, make sure that they're working properly, your equipment, making sure there are no red lights or alarms or anything happening, checking out to see when the last time was that they were maintained, because that should be, oftentimes they'll write down the service on a tag on different pieces of equipment. If you have any code violations, which is that first site one that you see, that should not be. And any danger zones or warning lights, again, on your systems or equipment. So sounds, so what you're seeing there is a picture of our furnace, and one of the fans, as a part-time custodian was walking through, he heard something that sounded almost like a screeching. So listening for those sounds, if you have something that's loose or that's unusual or weird, any warning alarms. So making sure that you're really listening to your equipment as you're walking by it or looking at it and checking it out. And smells, what you're seeing there is we had water infiltration from below a window well into the basement. So it was musty, and it brought us to this. We had to move some things, and it brought us to this little leak that was happening. But also smells such as chemical or oil or burning, any of those things can alert you to issues that may be somewhere in the building.
Now that you have a sense of what you have and where it is, it's time to assemble and organize your documentation. So first, do you have architectural plans or as-built drawings for the original building and any subsequent renovation or addition projects? As-built drawings, if you aren't aware, those are the architectural plans with corrections in red, changes in red that reflect any changes that were made in the field after the planning was done. So sometimes a contractor can't build something exactly as it was designed, so a modification is made, and that is noted on the drawings. That's called an as-built drawing. So if you have those plans, they are like gold. They will help you and any engineers or architects or contractors locate the invisible components of your building, like the structural elements and the mechanical system elements. As I mentioned before, do you have manuals and warranty paperwork for all your equipment and systems? Are there any digital files with video tutorials on how to maintain things? Any of that material can help you in troubleshooting your systems and as well as planning for and paying for repairs. Take care to evaluate if any work that you plan to do will violate your warranty, because sometimes if you make any kind of modification to a system, your warranty is voided. Really important, do you have a log of the history of repairs to equipment or building elements in the interior, the exterior, and the grounds? Do you have a preventive maintenance checklist that you or a staff member or facilities person monitors regularly? Do you track your utility usage and cost? Do you have an emergency or disaster plan? If you don't have any of these documents, it's never too late to find them or create them. For your architectural drawings, if you don't have them, get in touch with your either your town or city or your county administration. Sometimes they have an archive of architectural drawings. If it's a recent building, the architect who designed it will have copies and can supply them to you. For warranty documents, they should have been provided when equipment was purchased and installed. And if you don't have current documents, it probably means that that warranty has expired. But just make sure that in the future, when you purchase equipment or anything that has a warranty, that you keep track of those documents. So we're going to provide some example templates, and these templates all came from a book called Building Science 101, a primer for librarians by Lynn M. Petrowitz and Scott Oz. It's a very informative book, and it is available through ALA Editions.
So we're going to start with the repair log, which, as I said before, oftentimes when something is repaired or maintained, you might have a tag on that piece of equipment that tells you when it was last serviced. But you really want to have all of that information in one place for you to consult and for others to consult. Say something happens and you're not able to be there, and there's an issue that needs to be taken care of. So one way to go about this is to use Google Docs for your repair log, and your preventative maintenance checklist and your utility tracker, which are two other documents that we will go through in a minute, so that you can ensure that there can be access by various individuals from any device. But there are also other solutions out there that are free that are more tailored to making sure that you are maintaining your equipment and systems. And those are called computer maintenance management systems, and they can be really helpful depending on your needs. My spouse owns and operates a cannoli factory, so they use a CMMS for their maintenance, and they pay for theirs, and it can be as robust as actually coordinating the service call for you. But they can be as pared down as just something like this repair log, so that you understand what you may need. So they can go down from the piece of equipment all the way down to all the parts that and then the replacement of that individual part. So it's a really nice thing. And as Charlie just put in the chat, their Select Hub did a comparison of different free CMMS software. So you might be able to look at that and see if something works for you. But regardless, saving these documents in a safe location that is accessible to those who need to consult or maintain them is the ultimate goal. So for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to focus on looking at the screen as you would see it in, say, an Excel document or a Google Doc that is, on any computer or device. So, or even if you wanted to start off with a paper log that was somewhere in your building that people can get to. However, I would say being able to access it when you're outside of the building, because we all know that sometimes as directors you'll get a call or get an alert from one of your systems saying that there is a code or an alarm going off somewhere on a Saturday night or a Sunday evening if your building is not open. So this particular repair log, you'll see it has an historical counting of all the repairs done to certain elements or equipment in and around your building. So this spreadsheet could have tabs for interior, exterior, equipment, and grounds. The spreadsheet on the screen is for exterior repairs. You'll see at the bottom all the tabs for those other portions or pieces of your overall physical plant. So how you organize it is up to you, but the information listed should all be included because it becomes a historical document, an emergency document, and a planning tool. And it's important to have a copy of this handy for you and anyone else who will be responding to an emergency or an issue within any portion of your facility. And placing the log sheet near any relevant equipment is also a good idea. So here you're seeing the item itself, the type of repair, the installation date so that you know when it was put into the building, the repair date, the manufacturer of that particular item, the material of that item, the model and serial numbers, the contract company, the contact name at that contract company, the routine maintenance number, and the emergency number because they could be different, the warranty term and expiration date, and the expected replacement date. So you'll see how, I don't know if you have capital plans that you work with in your counties and municipalities, but you can put these things into the capital plan because if you had gutters put in and they should last for a certain amount of years, and then your expected replacement date is in fiscal year 2040, then you want to be able to put that into your plan so that they're aware that expenditure may be coming up. Sometimes things happen in an emergency and they have to come up sooner and find the money for that. But if you're able to mostly forecast, that can help with your capital needs, because we see a lot of deferred maintenance in buildings, and that's what we want to try to avoid with this and make sure that repair is done when needed and the equipment and systems are maintained and the items are maintained in your building. And what I can do too, Charlie, I can send you the Excel documents of these documents that you can also share if that helps, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel and then put all of this into, try to take notes on what goes into each one. The preventative maintenance checklist. So this looks like a very scary document because it has a lot of information on it as well, but a lot of it is just looking at, a monthly walkthrough and making sure that the maintenance has been done or whatever frequency is required. So for instance, you have the type of maintenance that needs to be done, so your lighting, so making sure that they're functioning, that if they need to be replaced, going through and looking monthly for those and having an X mark put in so that you are able to see when it was last checked. So being proactive with this can only help mitigate costly and stressful emergency situations. So it's comprised of an inventory of the equipment and systems that need attention, that need testing, that need care at specified intervals. This particular template is set up for a monthly sweep of the facility with more detailed frequency of tasks called out if you need to. But this document should also accompany you on any condition walkthrough. So cross-check any notes that you take on this document with your repair log, as it may indicate areas of adjustment for service or replacement. So you may need to, this is a dynamic document, not a static document. And then finally, the utility tracker. So next to salaries and materials budgets, utilities costs comprise a large percentage of any facility's operating budget. So tracking your utility costs for electric, gas, oil, water, data, telephone, etc., will assist you in planning your annual operation budget, as well as providing fodder and also require analysis for upgrades to your systems and equipment and any capital planning initiatives. So when I was talking about that energy transition earlier, oftentimes the upfront cost can be a lot, but if you do a life cycle cost analysis, you may find out that you're actually saving money in the long run compared to what you're spending now on oil or natural gas or a system that's just old and needs to be replaced.
So I'm actually going to skip this slide. I am just going to, because Charlie has let us know that you're going to have a separate webinar on disaster planning. I just want to mention that we did provide a couple of links for preparation and post-storm assessment. There are links that help you prepare for different kinds of storms and different kinds of situations. And then there are some information from the EPA about handling debris on a post-storm situation. So, and how to assess whether you need to call in officials in terms of significant damage to your building. So the accessibility assessment, this is, I think, really important. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, is over 30 years old now, and really all public buildings should be fully accessible. But we know in reality that there are many, many library buildings in Massachusetts, and I'm guessing in Kentucky also, that are not fully accessible. So one tool for you to understand the deficiencies of your building is an accessibility assessment. And you want to call in an outside consultant to help you in reviewing your accessibility use or your accessibility of your building. Sometimes towns or cities or possibly counties also look at all of their buildings at once as an overall assessment and planning initiative. So talk to your local officials about whether the library is involved in a larger assessment project. But if you don't have an initiative on the horizon and there's a need to improve the accessibility of your library, there are organizations and agencies in Kentucky that can help you. And we gave you a number of different links, the Kentucky Office of the ADA, the CATS Network Coordinating Center, which I tried to find out what CATS stands for, and I was not able to. I think it is Kentucky Assistive Technology Solutions, maybe. The Southeast ADA Center is, there's a system of regional ADA centers maintained by the federal government, and they're always a good source of information. And then also the link to the actual building code related to accessibility in Kentucky. One thing that you need to understand is if you're doing any work on your building, if you're making any kinds of renovations, even if they're not related to accessibility, depending on the dollar amount you spend compared to the assessed value of the building, you may trigger full ADA compliance or partial ADA compliance in your building. So make sure that you understand the impact of any renovations you are going to perform in relation to the ADA requirements. Also, one thing that is important to know is that your state may have stricter requirements than the federal law. So ADA is a baseline. In Massachusetts, there's a state architectural access board that has some requirements that are stricter than the federal law. So we did provide, as I said, the link to the Kentucky Building Code and some local resources to determine those differences. And I also wanted to bring to your attention, Charlie had mentioned to me that some libraries in the state are having discussions about assistive animals as related to the ADA, and I did find just this morning a recorded webinar called Ask an ADA Professional Questions About Service Animals. So I provided the link to that as well. As far as energy assessment goes, Andrea spoke about that earlier, and we did provide the link to the Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet. Sometimes energy assessments will be done by utility companies or your local utility. There may be some state incentives for upgrading your energy use. So hopefully we'll be able to find that information there.
And speaking of incentives, everything here comes down to funding, right? So looking at your municipal budget, your county budget, your capital plan. If you have trust funds, we have libraries up here in the Northeast that have trustees who actually own and operate the building, but they still get financial assistance from the municipality as well. So a lot of those trustees have trust funds that were established in the 1800s and early 1900s that they're still able to access, for use on the buildings themselves. And then there are also grants. But really looking at, especially now, since there are so many ways to do an energy transition, and we know that we all have to be working together toward this goal, that utility companies and state governments are oftentimes offering grants and assistance and incentives and to help with that energy transition. But trying to figure out how to fund these upgrades and maintain your buildings. But as we said before, the more data that you have to share and show, the stronger your case. So you could say, well, we have a really old boiler, but if you can show how many times you've had to repair it within the last 2 or 3 years, that could put you on a capital plan faster than if you just said, well, it's an old boiler and it could be going anytime within the next 5-7 years or whatever it may be. So really looking at your local funding sources, which I'm sorry to say we're not as familiar with what you have down in Kentucky, but I know that there are things out there, and starting those conversations with your utility companies and your local and state governments is really key to finding the money that you need to maintain your building. And the final slide is the resources. So Lauren mentioned the Building Science 101 book already, but also we really love the Fred Schlick and John Mormon book, The Practical Handbook of Library Architecture, Creating Building Spaces That Work. There's another more recent one that Lauren has that's a distillation of that particular handbook because it's quite a large tome. But Lauren, you can share that particular title if you have it right on hand.
Yes, it's called Constructing Library Buildings That Work by Fred Schlipp. It is, I think it's a 2020 or 2021 copyright date, and it's only about a half an inch thick as opposed to what, 3 inches for the
Yes.
practical handbook. So it's an easier read.
Yes, and I would say the practical handbook, the only chapter that probably doesn't hold up right now is the one on lighting, because it was during the transition from fluorescent to LED. And now mostly everything is LED. So that's the one caveat that I have for that particular book. And then this is our contact information here. So if you have any questions for us that you can't ask here and you would like to send to us, we'd be happy to answer them. But we only have about 4 minutes, but we can stay longer. But if you have questions for us now.
Anything, the burning question that you've been wanting to ask somebody about how to deal with a library building? And as Andrea said, our email addresses are there, and you will get them when you download the slide. We are happy to answer questions if we can offline. As I said earlier, we are both passionate about library buildings, and if we can help in any way with your questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch.
We actually have, that is our email address, but also they shortened it for us too, which I didn't put on the slide. So I'll write in both of our shortened.
Thank you, Andrea. But even if you use the longer version, it gets to us. Don't worry about that. Okay, well, if there aren't any questions, this is just a little humor to close it out. And yes, thank you, Chris from KDLA. It's always good to start with your local state library people, because they often have more specific information about your local circumstance. So thank you, Chris, for putting your email in there as well.
And we'll make sure to send off all of those spreadsheets to Charlie so she can share them with you.
Yes, thank you so much, Andrea and Lauren, for a great presentation. And also want to shout out to Chris in case any of the attendees don't know him. He's one of our regional library consultants and used to be in the construction consultant position. Not really his job anymore, but he's so gracious and being willing to help with information and assistance. So yeah, you can feel free to reach out for him. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick wrap up. If you do have questions, please feel free to chat them in while I'm talking. We want to thank the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences for their sponsorship of today's webinar and our services here at KDLA. The webinar was recorded, and I'll have it up in our online portal within the next day or so. Once that's posted, you'll be able to get your certificate of attendance in your learner dashboard. And if you need a refresher on how to do that in our new system, you can find it on our website where you went to register for this webinar. I'm going to go ahead and pop in the survey for today's webinar into the chat. Just had it. Where did it go? There it is. We greatly appreciate your responses to this survey. It informs what we do. Here we go. If you just take a quick second, 4 or 5 questions. And that is all I have. Wanted to just reiterate that I am going to be sending out a follow-up email with all the links that we had today, as well as the additional documents that Andrea and Lauren talked about. And we finally just want to thank you, Andrea and Lauren, once again for sharing your time. So gracious of you, and we really appreciate your sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun. And I just wanted to mention if there was anything in what we said that wasn't completely clear, if you have any suggestions for improving our presentation, we'd be happy to hear that as well.
That is a great offer. Yeah. Thank you so much. Because I'm sure you all are
Thank you.
probably in a bit of demand around the country.
We love doing this because, you know, it's our life.
Absolutely.
And we're happy to get into the nitty gritty with people because this was a very high level overview because that's all we can really fit into an hour. So please let us know if you have specific questions.
Right.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thanks, everybody. And for our attendees, whenever you're ready to exit, you can just close your tab, your internet tab. Easy peasy.
Have a great day, everybody.